and I know this book was hitting. I know it was hitting because I was like, man, hell, I was 18, 19 reading this thing, you know. I circled, you know, words like intuition and you know, maktub, you know, it was written, you know, this, I mean, I was underlying some profound stuff if I was going to say so myself, you know.
Well, so The Alchemist is what's pulling us together. We were talking small talk beforehand. That's a shame that we're just now getting a chance to actually meet outside of Twitter. But this book, The Alchemist, you should hold your copy up real quick, Doc.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can see who knew about this book a long time ago, which is probably why he is where he is versus where I am today, kind of catching up. And this is my copy. But The Alchemist is a book that's been referenced on Pursuit a number of times already. It'll probably produce a lot of content along the way because I think it's an important book. And before we get to though, Dr. Trey, why don't you give your background and introduce everybody to who you are? I like to give you the opportunity to tell your story because I could research you and I can pull the
Yeah.
website, but that's not you. Like I want you to define who you are to the audience.
Well, man, I appreciate you, Justin, man. And like you said, this is long overdue, and I'm glad that this book brought us together because your journey with the pursuit, and then you know my story is tied to a pursuit as well, but also just living aspirationally. I came to a point to where I was hitting like a glass ceiling in my life, and I was coming out of some turmoil within my life. I call it the fog years, and my mom likes to call them seasons of life. And there was some times, and I listen. I grew up real good. You know, I grew up in the middle class. You know, the neighborhood. I had a good family. My parents have been married 43 years. You know, they came from you know, a different environment, and they wanted to make our environment, as far as me and my sister is concerned, a different environment. So they gave us access. Now we weren't rich or anything. You know, we had, you know, we went to the suburbs. We had box fan in the windows some summers and all that, but we had access to things, Justin, you know. So my point about that is like, listen, we started out on good foot. We went to college. At least I did, and all that. And I started well, and I was doing good. And then I hit a lull right around, I think it was 29 or something around there. And then I was just trying to discover myself. So I was trying to make this, cause I had a disconnect with, you know, my fundamental kind of values, just trying to make my way, rediscover. Cause I was always ahead. I've always been an old soul. So I've always been like, if I was 18, I was 28. I was 28, I was 38, you know, and now I'm 43, I feel 60. It's just because of who I am and what I'm about. And so in that lull that I'm talking about, these fog years, this was my really one of my seasons where it lasts, you know, 6 or 7 years. And this is where just a period of time to where it was just, trying to just find myself. And and then I was like, okay, after I came out of that, where I was, you know, made self destruction, I was still doing well professionally, but then it was okay. What about sense of self, Justin? You know, what about sense of self? So after that, it was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And that's when this, you know, that's why I love your pursuit or live aspirationally. It was like, what is it that I want to do? And then this is where this plan came from. And I know we'll talk about a little bit more, you know, while we talk, you know, but that's the crux of, you know, what is all happening now is visualizing what to do next, maximizing oneself. You know, a lot of people talk about gratitude, but people talk about it in a way where it's, I talk about GP. They turn gratitude into general platitudes rather than an actual gratitude, right? So so this is where I am now. The gratitude to maximize oneself. If you have that opportunity, it's such a magical thing. So this is where I am.
I think we should actually have you back to do it. So I have the pursuit has the on our pursuit, which is more of kind of like an interview of your story, how you got there, because you embody the pursuit in that you have figured out what you wanted and you've constructed your life to allow you to do that, and now you're trying to do even more of it. So I think we may need to do another episode in the future, have you come back and we'll do it again, or maybe I can make a trip up. One of my goals of
Yeah.
pursuit is to actually go see people and do the interviews
Yeah.
in person, and then I'm doing these little documentary videos and like shoot a documentary as well. So we may have to make that happen. But before we get to Alchemist, there's another book I'll throw on your radar that I just started reading. You know, Donald Miller, the author. He wrote
Mm-mm.
one book that a lot of advisors know is Story Brands. So it's talking
Okay.
about like creating stories. But so he wrote this book, but he's written other books. And the one I'm reading now is Hero on a Mission, I think is what it's called. Hero
Okay.
on, I'll make sure I have the right show notes. But in it, he talks about we have 4 actors that we can play. We can be the hero on a mission. We can be the hero, we can be the villain, we can be the victim, or we can be a guide. And the guide is something that I see in you and your aspirations for what you're doing. And I only bring it up because there's a guide, there's guides in The Alchemist. But Donald Miller said being a guide is like the highest duty that we can serve because every hero needs somebody to help them along their way. And if you are in a position to help somebody reach their personal legend or whatever maybe they're to accomplish, like that's one of the greatest things that we can do. And I hear you having a desire to be a guide with the work that you're doing. So I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. And it's
Yeah.
what's really weird is how all these things start connecting, which is what tells me that I'm on the right path for me because connections like this, books tie together, like it all is just kind of like coming together. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, when it all comes together, what's it really going to be? I know I'm heading in the right direction. So I think talking about heading in the right direction is a good intro to The Alchemist. And I want to ask you, since you've got the old OG version, do you remember how you came across the book?
Yeah, funny. I have these pen underlines in here, and I don't have as many. I know we'll talk about that later, but I had these pen underlines, and not as many as I do now when I reread it for this
Mm-hmm.
for this episode. And it took me back. So I used to collect different pens.
Mm-hmm.
I used to practice my handwriting a lot, Justin. So that was just
Old
like one of
soul,
my
you
things.
are.
Yeah, and I need to get back to that because now my handwriting is a little messy, and so anyway, so it took me back to when I was concentrating on that and when I had my pen, so that's helped me remember the circa date, circa, right? So it had to be at the tail end of my high school, so right around 97, 98, 99, somewhere around there, and I was really exploring books at the time. I was late to reading. I when I was coming up, Justin, in grades, not in grade school, junior high, and in my early years of high school, I started really getting good at writing. I've been writing poetry since I was 13, and my teachers kind of saw that I had a knack for writing. Now, I was always last minute with things, and that frustrated my teachers. So they were like, "You could do better," So they were encouraging me to maximize myself. So my thing about that is that I didn't really pay attention to the books that I was reading at the time. So what I do is I'd read the front a little bit, I read the back, maybe a little bit of the middle, and then I'd write myself a good paper. And they knew that I didn't write a good paper. I mean, they knew I didn't read the book. They just knew I wrote a good paper. So fast forward a few years to where I read a John Grisham book. I read a John Grisham book, and I was like, okay, I like reading a little more, right? So anyway, I just started wanting to discover oneself because my writing was about that, my poetry was about that, and I was like, oh, okay, how do I want to start investigating oneself and answer some questions about the inner Preston, the inner self, questions about the world, what about these conversations, having dialogue with the spirit, because I used to have these conversations with my mother, but I wanted to take them a deep further, and I used to investigate these through my poetry writing as well. So long story long, but I think that was some color context there. I started investigating that around high school, late high school, and this is where I try to find this book.
I wish my reason for finding it was that deep. Because I really haven't. I grew up religious. I wouldn't say like spiritual. I went to Catholic school, was raised Catholic, so like I've got that relationship with God and religion, but I really wasn't thinking about any of this like going deeper until recently. And I really do think it's from starting my firm and becoming an entrepreneur and becoming a creator. And when I became a creator, like I'm thinking bigger than content creation. Like, yeah, I create podcasts and things, but I uncovered this creator inside of me, which is what led me down this path. So I didn't discover the book until I think it was 3 years ago when I initially bought it. I've told the story somewhere else, but we've got new listeners and viewers, so we'll tell the story real
Yeah.
quick. I'm 99% sure the reason I found it 3 years ago was the same reason it came back up this past year. So 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I was really watching and listening to a lot of Kobe Bryant content, and it was before he had
Mm.
passed away. But it was the post-retirement Kobe. I just loved his business mind and the things he was doing. And I believe it was the interview with Jay Shetty, who at the time I had no idea who he was. And he
Mm.
mentioned The Alchemist as his favorite book because I know Jay asked him that. So I immediately went out and bought it. If it was good for Kobe, it's good for me. I remember getting it, and I remember getting like 6 pages in and then stopping. Time goes by. I do, live life, read other books, don't even think about the book again. And then I found Jay Shetty in the form of, his book, Think Like a Monk, because it's where I
Mm.
am in my journey today. So I read Jay's book, which prompted me to go back and start watching more of his podcasts. And I watched the Kobe one again, and The Alchemist came back up. And I thought to myself, I know I have that book somewhere, and I couldn't find it. So I ordered it from Amazon and got it the next day, and I read it in just a few days. And the weird thing is, like, maybe after I finished reading it, I found my original copy, and it was still tucked in on page 6. That's where I stopped. And the cool thing about it, I think, is I'm like I said, I'm convinced it was the same interview that made me buy it the first time, which was the same interview that made me read it again. So it's kind of full circle.
Mm.
But I'm glad I didn't read it 4 years ago, because
Mm.
I don't think it would have meant as much to me as it did when I read it this year, which kind of
Mm.
ties into some of the stuff in The Alchemist, and some of the things I've learned on this journey as of late is that things happen when they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And it's, whether it's God or the universe, like, I think the message in this book is universal, that it can
Mhm.
apply to any faith or any belief system. And that's one of the things I want to try to do a good job of with the pursuit, is not exclude anybody, because I think these principles, you can swap out nouns or who's controlling things with what your belief is, and it's still going to resonate and still be true. So mine is, Kobe and Jay Shetty is the reason I read it. But once I read it this time, I couldn't put it down, and I marked it up. And the thing is, I'm going to have to go back and read it again, even within the same
Yeah.
year, because as I was preparing and finding the quotes I wanted to discuss with you, I was finding other quotes I wanted to underline that were more relative to where I am today.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's an interesting book. I think is a timeless book, and the high level of it, without going into much detail, because we're going to talk about it, is just basically a book about somebody going on their journey,
Mm.
um, and somebody in between buying it the first time and buying the second time. I think it was one of my advisors in the AGC with me mentioned the book and said that they thought I was Santiago, who's the main character of the book. And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, I'm definitely Santiago. Like, that is me on the journey I'm going. So the high level of the book, and then I'll be quiet, is it's an individual going on their journey, basically trying to find their purpose, and the people they come along with, and the events that they experience that ultimately lead them to understanding what their truth is, their
Mhm.
personal legend, as the book talks about. And again, I think for anybody who's interested in this pursuit, if you haven't read it, you should go out there. I've got probably 20 copies of them. Shoot
Yeah.
me a DM.
Yeah.
Send me an email at justin@prst.co, and I will send you one. Like, I like giving books away that I think are meaningful, so I've got a bunch of copies to give away. I already did one round of giveaways when I put it out on Twitter. So
Yeah, you got to drop a note in there, Justin.
yeah, yes. Well, so I have a bunch. That's what I wanted to do, but it was taking me too long the first time I sent them out. I ended up just doing Amazon and real short notes. But I wanted to
Mhm.
write in the books to give it to somebody just because of the experience, which
Mhm.
I will do this time. So let's have you give a real quick summary of what The Alchemist means to you. Again, not too much detail, but how would you describe this book as what it meant to you?
Yeah, I think you get it. I think you gave a real good summary there. It's about discovery of oneself. Um, you know, setting out to find, one that you use purpose. Yes, what is one's purpose, and what is that? Because see, Justin, at an early age, we don't necessarily know what purpose is. It's such a uh, just a powerful word. We don't know things quite yet. My grandfather, if we were having a discussion one time, I think I was like 13, and I kept saying, "You know what I'm saying?" I said, "Pop, you grow up, Pop, you know what I'm saying?" And he was like, "No, son, I don't know what you're saying. Quit saying that." You know, he was old school. He's very particular with his words. But but then he flipped it on me, and then because I was talking, and then he told a story, and he said, "You know what I'm saying?" Old people have a way of flipping it on you. And I said, "No, Grandpa, Papa, I don't know what you're saying there." He said, "That's okay, son. Keep living." And he was just telling me that you're gonna need some life experiences. And so this book is about life experiences to figure out what purpose is. Figuring out oneself. Having there's so many words: courage, discovery, what you're what you're and you do have to find your own path to even figure out what it is you do or don't want. You have to figure out these natural feelings on life. There's a little bit of love in the book. There's trade off in the book. There's there's all these running themes for you to say, okay. There's also experiences of trial and triumph. All right, you go through these when we hear this word grit a lot, and I share with people all the time is, there is factors. There's been studies on grit and there's books on grit, but you actually have to go through some, you know, to get some grit. And so I highlight again, you have to go through you got to go through some it, you get to some grit, right? And then you have that moment, and this is what this book is about. The enlightenment comes through the path of a journey, and this is what this is all about. And I know that made me a little long, but this is what this book is about.
That that sparked a lot of comments. You mentioned courage and going on these journeys and these experimenting. What I hope comes through pursuit and what it grows to be, and I've got big visions for it. That it's tough for me not to share it all, but I want to grow into it. Is to give people the courage to to figure out what they want. Not even the courage to go on the journey quite yet, but the courage to figure out what it is that they want. Because what I've realized, and we see this as advisors talking to people all the time, you know, I don't think everybody knows really who they are or what they want. It took me a long time to understand when people talk about living in a simulation in the Matrix, what that means. Because I go to the movies and to like the very, basic kindergarten thinking of what that means. But it's more about so many people are living lives that they're told they're supposed to live. This is what you're supposed to do. This is where you're supposed to go. You're supposed to have this career. But they may not even want that. And no, and I don't think enough people stop to say, well, why? Why am I doing this? Why did I go to this college? Why did I study this? Some people that might be the real that may be their why, and that's where they're supposed to be. But I think a lot of them will be, well, my parents told me to. Well, why did my parents tell me? Well, that's what it's. And then they get to the bottom of these whys, and what they're doing is not what they really want to do. And I think it's scary to have that conversation because you've created this life, you've created this persona, this is who you are, you have this identity that really isn't what you want it to be. And to shed that and almost start over at any stage of life, but especially later when you have a family and a career and you're established, like that's a scary thing to do. But I think there's so much happiness and fulfillment. And I honestly believe that the finances take care of themselves on the other side. Because I think if you're doing what you're really excited to do and you're called to do and it has passion, that you're just doing a good job and, finances take care of themselves. But I think that more people need to go on this journey. You don't have to go through the desert per se, but figuring out what it is that you really want. That's why I'm trying to pose these questions. I did today on Twitter. If you woke up with $100 million in the bank, what would you do different tomorrow than you did today? And start diving in on those things. It kind of makes me think of George Kinder's life planning. What would you, if you found out today was your last day, what would you regret? Who did you not become? All right. Those are the things you need to be focusing on. How do we make sure that if you die in a year, you don't have those same regrets? And those are the things you need to pay more attention to and figure out how do you bring more of that into your life. But if you never ask those questions, you never go on that journey, then you're never able to bring that to you. So
No doubt, no doubt. Those are great questions, and you have to have, those are audits of oneself. Those are audits of oneself, is to ask. And we have to be mindful too that you know sometimes those are challenging questions because like Maslow's triangle, people are trying to take care of their base needs too, and there's generational transfers of stories and just uh, maybe some trauma or some same behaviors and this that and the other that we have to overcome. So we have to be when we are sharing stories of transformation and aspiration and giving people permission. We do have to meet people where they are and let them process that, and then we can get to the aspiration too. And then some people, and I wouldn't say just, and I would just say contentment is contentment sometimes gets a negative spin, but it's also positive too. It deals with it in the book as well. That's okay as well. Just like everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur, Justin, or a business owner. That's okay too. There's not an issue for working along somebody inside of a good company. Also, so contentedness, that's okay if that's what people are. That may be their aspiration. You know,
And
my,
that
my
is what's so hard about this is that I agree with you 100% because what I think of is I'm trying to find the people who are supposed to be entrepreneurs or who are supposed to go try to do these other things, but they are afraid because they don't have the
right,
encouragement or they don't think they can. Um,
right,
but just like in our profession, like I don't think there is one right way for a financial advisor to work. There's different ways for different people. You've got to find what works for you. If we think about niching down, I want my niche for Pursuit to be the dreamers that are supposed to dream that just don't know it yet. To give them that
yeah,
inspiration, to give them the aha moment, to say, "Hey, it's okay." And then it's not easy. You've got to work hard. You've got to try. Maybe you start out small. Like it's not like I never want to be the person who says overnight you can change everything. But I want
ah,
people to know that if there's more that you want to do, you feel like you have a greater calling, it is possible through exploration and trying and going on this journey to get there. You can do it. That's what my
yes,
hope is. But I am with you, and I think it's a good thing to point out that if that's not you, that's okay as well. And I think you can benefit from these conversations as well. But that is a fair comment to say not everybody's supposed to go do that, which is perfectly fine. You've got to know your truth, your personal legend. If your personal legend is contentment, then that's perfectly fine as well.
right, right. And contentment is in it can be in the pursuit. So everybody's own journey of contentment is different.
Hmm.
I want to say I know you're about to pivot, but this is within the book too, which is some of your story and some of our story are quite aligned. I know it's some other people's story too. Is the time it took to get here. And we
Hmm.
have more growth to do as well. You and I think we're both about the same age. I'm 43. I think you're in your early 40s or two,
Just
I
turned
think.
40, yes.
Yeah, turn 40. Yeah, so welcome to the club. So, but this is a perfect time of life if you think about it in the continuum of life. We're right in the middle, as far as our physical aspects, our mental capacity, everything like that. We're right in that middle point. It's a great part of life. My point about this is this. I've heard some of your story too, to where you have tried different things in the industry. You come up, you own your own practice. You're doing the pursuit. You've done these different things. It's fabulous, right? But there was a buildup. There was a buildup of investigation. Me as well. You looked at my page, my LinkedIn page. I had stops here, I had stops there. I had experiences. I had some triumphs. I had some trial. And folks like to skip over the buildup period, or that investigation period, sometimes falling, sometimes, getting really high. And even during the high moments, it's like, okay, is this it? Now, do I want to continue here, or do I need to go do something else because am I fulfilled? Okay, so it is a journey, and that's some of this in the book,
Hmm.
isn't
Hmm.
it?
Oh, totally, yeah. Well, and I'm with you that I mean I wish I would have figured these things out earlier, and that's part of
Yes.
try to plant these seeds for other people to find earlier as well. But I told my wife, she just turned 40 the end of last month. I said I am excited for the next 10 years. Like I don't want to wish the next decade away, but I think this next decade is going to be the best yet for a number of reasons. One, the ages of our boys, we can do more things. It's fun. They're getting older. Where we are professionally, but then also this understanding, like I'm excited about the growth that I've had and the
Mhm.
growth that's going to be coming, because now I'm more intentional about it. Like now I understand
Mhm.
more of where I need to go to dig deeper to continue to figure this out. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I agree with you. It's a great stage, but I'm excited because of what I've uncovered and discovered, and finding more people like yourself who have done so as well. It's interesting when you go down this. When I first started the pursuit and having these conversations and talking about some of these things that come up, I always would throw the disclaimer. I know this sounds crazy or it sounds a little out there, just to people that don't think I'm nuts. But then, like the more I talk to people, there's other people that they understood it, they've experienced it as well. And while we can't take our experiences and interject them into somebody to have them have the aha moment, I think through our experiences and the experience of others, it can help people identify their own experience and not miss it. I think a lot of times we go by and we go through life, we're so busy that these experiences or things happen in our life that could have been an aha moment that we just miss.
Mhm.
And again, I think telling more of these stories gives people that opportunity. And I don't have any plan. I know I have an agenda. There's no pivots in this. Like wherever this
Yeah.
conversation goes, and there's no timeline to it. Um, I do want to highlight a couple of spots of the book, and I think that
Yeah.
one I had picked out is kind of perfect here. Is on page 60. You don't need to go to it, but he actually talks about how and it's not 60. 60 was change. It is, well, I'm talking about change. There's a line in there that goes into the contentment. The old man he's talking to said, I don't want to change anything because I don't know how to deal with change. I'm used to the
Mm.
way I am. And that goes to that courage part to realize and going back and saying, hey, who you have thought you are may be a sliver of truth, but there's something else more to you. And I love change. I seek it.
Mhm.
My wife, on
Mhm.
the other hand, she's perfectly content with the way things are, and she doesn't like change. Um,
Mhm.
how, if somebody finds themselves being in that position of where they don't like change, but maybe they want to explore deeper, how how do you help somebody overcome that fear of change? Or do you? Or do you just say, hey, that's who you are, and don't change?
Well, yeah, that's tough. In that same on those same pages, though, he did allow himself to experience the moment of change. He said, you know, he knew he wasn't going to change, but he wanted to participate in somebody else's life. You know, while he was there, he wanted that excitement. He knew that this was his period. You know, as far as you said, guidance is concerned. Now, I'm both a guidance and a experiencer as well. You know, so I do both at the same time. You know, in this particular character, he ultimately knew that his life was already uh, changed. He just wasn't going to go all the way with it. He was contented. He was comfortable. He'd already experienced enough change to where he didn't have to go full boat. He did get his change in. So I actually admired him for uh, moving the needle a little bit. Because he didn't have to move at all. He could have stayed exactly where he was, you know. And for that time period that he knew Santiago, he actually did get to moving and shaking a little bit. And he was like, there was a scene in there, and he was like, "Man, why the hell did you have to tell me all this, man? Now I got to do some of this stuff, right, right, you know." And, right. So he was like, okay, he went along with it, and he would just say, now it's your turn, young man, young woman, go ahead and do what you got to do. I helped you get along here. Do what you got to do. You've helped me change and get and open up my eyes, open up my spirit. I appreciate you. See, the gift was reciprocal. He said, so you've done enough for me. Now go do your thing. That's the way I saw it.
And that brings up a cool thought about like people. So you
Mhm.
mentioned your mom talking about how did she
Seasons.
seasons? Yeah, so I call them chapters. Same thing.
Yeah.
Um, so in these chapters, in these seasons, people come in our lives for a reason, and I think part of change also is the people we surround ourselves with may not always be the best people for us forever if we're going on this journey. And the thought of losing relationships is tough. But to your point, we come into people's lives for a reason, and it's okay if we outgrow each other.
Mm,
You and I may communicate a lot over the next few years, and then it may taper off because we
mhm.
helped each other get to where we needed to be over those few years, and that's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean we don't like each other. It just means
Right.
that the frequency of conversations and the depth of conversation tapers off because we've maximized how we can help each other, and then it's on for somebody else to help me and for you to help somebody else, and that's okay. And I think that that's a part of the journey as well, is realizing that some people are going to come along with you and some people are going to drop off, and that's okay. Um, I,
Mhm.
I think
And
about.
you carry those, and you
Mhm.
carry those for those people that stay with you during those chapters or seasons, you know, they really never leave. You know, I have a friend that I grew up with for a long time, and we don't talk that much. We may not even talk ever again. You know, but that doesn't take away 15 years. It doesn't take away that. You know, can I? It's kind of like being elected to the Hall of Fame, and whether sports. And I know dudes. They default to sports references sometimes, but you know, can can you write a story? It's like winning an award, or whatever. Can you write the history of whatever that is, that sector, without that person? And when I pass away, can I write my life without this particular person? And I can't. So even though we may not ever talk again, you know, I can't not write my story without this person.
Yeah,
You know.
the impact was made.
Yeah, yeah.
What about, as you marked up your book back in the day? How had the areas you marked up then changed versus the ones you've marked now?
Yeah, I was looking at that. I didn't have enough, even though I, even though I said I was a old soul, still am. 18 going on 20, so on and so forth. I I should have had. Well, no, no, not really. I shouldn't have had as many markups as I do now that I did then. You know, when I was there, I had some pretty good markups. But there was when I went back to the book, my book was sans markups. When I went through it this time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was the lick," right? I was like all these nuggets. I was like, "Goodness gracious!" So, you know, uh, I saw so much more this time around, and you're talking about a good 23 years, something like that, 20, maybe even 25 years. This time around, the first time around, you can tell, I can tell at least, that I was really early in this discovery stage. I was like, I'm looking for something. I'm really searching. I didn't know what I was searching for. Remember we were talking about, I didn't even know what the heck I was searching for. I just didn't, but I knew I was searching for something, you know. And I know this book was hidden. I know it was hidden because I was like, man, hell, I was 18, 19 reading this thing, you know. I circled words like intuition and you know Maktub, it was written, this I mean I was underlying some profound stuff if I was going to say so myself, but but I was devoid of life experience at that time. So this time around, I just saw so much more, and I was appreciative. Again, we were talking offline. Wow, it means something that we've connected here, and through this book too, because I appreciate it because it made me go back to this book and read, and I was just like, I just saw so much more things.
When I read it, there was a mixture of, okay, that inspires me and that makes sense, and I need to think about this. But I had a lot of confirmation bias from this book, which to me is really cool because, like I mentioned, I just started kind of this process you started back when you were 18 and 19 of kind of digging deeper and looking more at self. And a lot of the things that I've carried with me through my whole life, the way I viewed things, and just I'm seeing in books like this, and I've read other books that are similar to the same thing. Like, I don't know where I picked this up because I don't ever remember being taught, and I didn't read this before, but it's just kind of in who I am. So to see that in the pages of a book that's so loved and so meaningful gives me confidence that, these things I'm thinking about and this direction I'm going, there's something there. Like, I'm not crazy. There's some truth to it. And then alongside, there was some good things that I really liked. And you mentioned intuition. That was one of the passages I had marked. And he talks about how intuition is really a sudden immersion of the soul into the universal current of life, where the histories of all people are connected and we're able to know everything because it's all written there. And
There it is.
those are the comments that, like, I would disclaim and say, I'm not crazy. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but there is an interconnected amongst a lot of things. And I think sometimes it gets passed off as coincidence. And I'm beginning to believe there's very little coincidence in life, and it's more, because it's supposed to happen. Again, us getting together. I don't think it's coincidence that you saw me tweet about The Alchemist and that you responded. Like, that all happened for a reason. And maybe the reason is just for us to record this podcast, or maybe the reason's much greater that we haven't even uncovered yet that we'll find out in a few years. But there is an interconnectedness. And this is where I've gotten more spiritual, and I've kind of moved away from, like, religion. I still am religious. We still go to church. I still have that belief because that's who I am. But I have a more spiritual look at everything, that there is an interconnectedness. And I have a friend that's much further in his journey and is way more spiritual than I am, and, believes in reincarnation and has gone and had his past lives read to him. And I don't know if I get that far into it, but then when he tells it, there's certain things that make me think, well, maybe there is some truth to that. And I don't know where that part of my journey goes when it comes to how deep into that do I get. But it's like, I think you can really get going into these things and look a lot deeper.
Well, yeah, I will say, what you're touching on is a great point far as spirituality, and people sometimes shy away from the word religion because it's been in the world, right, in the worldly terms, has been taken away from what it's supposed to be. It's practices, it's commitment, it's belief, it's faith. All right, so spirituality sounds, and it is better. It's a connectedness with something higher than ourselves as human beings down here on this planet. So we find something's more digestible. All right, I would share that when we find spiritual natures and these references to God and faith based, whatever your faith is, your spiritual nature is, wherever your faith course is, wherever it is. All right. People like different packaging. All right. When it's in The Alchemist, all right, or any of self-help books or this, that, and the other, all right, as long as it's not in a scripture, they'll eat that up. They're like, "Oh man, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard." And I'm like, "All right, well, we got a few scripture books that'll help you with that. Whatever your faith is, or your wherever you get your spirituality from. Most of everything is somewhere that originates in a scripture book. Boy, they just reference it differently in books like these.
Right. Well, which is what makes me believe that there's so much truth to all this, is these stories have been told forever.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we're supposed to know this. It's just finding the right packaging for us to catch it. And I hear this stuff in like songs. Like, I'm a big hip hop fan. There's a song that Nas and Lauryn Hill have together called Nobody. And I listened to that after I kind of was going down this path. And I'm like, I think this song has a much deeper meaning, that Nas knows that there's some truths behind things like this, that he's going to put it in the form of a song because more people are going to listen to that. And some people are going to make those connections, because he talks about talking to his higher self. And I was even thinking, all right, is the song Nobody, one word, actually supposed to be the song Nobody with two words? Nobody, that we have no body, we are a soul, our higher learning. Lauryn Hill comes in talking about how she's saving people. Like, I think it's a much deeper song. It's a great song, but if you actually listen to it more and start asking more questions and do more reading and diving, it may be that Nas is trying to put you on to something that he's discovered that has helped him find his personal legend and create a great life, and the finances all fall along with. Like, I see all of these maybe it's because I'm looking for them. It's what I believe, but I see this all over the place. And again, it goes back to trying to help other people see that as well, so they can do their own journey if they need to.
Right, right. And then it was written. You saw
Yeah,
that too.
yeah,
It was in here too.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're a fan of Nas, man, for sure.
Oh yeah.
I
I
love me
pick
some
Nas.
Nas.
Everybody loves Jay Z. I pick Nas over Jay Z any day.
Yeah, yeah. They close, but yeah, I do. I'm a Nas fan as well. I'm a Nas fan as well. I wanted to. I don't know where next we go, but before you go, I wanted to pit. I wanted to just chime in on nurturing because my mother, uh, credit to her about allowing a young person, my sister and I, to investigate themselves, to express themselves, and able to navigate their their feelings, and having an open dialogue with discussion, and just sifting that out while we were young. And there's a passage in the book, or a couple of pages in the book, to where Santiago says what he believes his personal legend is to be, what he aspires, what his aspiration is. And his father listens to him, and again, listening attentively, providing a support system, and letting him discover as a young person, and supporting that was huge. That was a huge moment right there. And building that foundationally, self-worth, self-value, being believed in, listening, supported, heard, all of that, very early. That is one of the greatest gifts you can give a young person.
Hmm.
And it was right there in the book.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that because you know I want to try to be the best father that I can be, and I want to instill these principles in the boys. But I've realized like I can't force it into them, and it's scary at some points as a parent to think about giving them the freedom to go discover, because what if they go discover something I don't want them to discover? That
Mhm.
if I let them now, granted they're only 11 and 9, if I let them discover what their personal legend is, it's to play video games. Like that's not what I want them to be. But one of the things that I'm trying to get better at is letting them be who they're supposed to be, and not trying to force them in who I think they should be. Because who I think they should be will be tremendous young men that are very successful and do a lot of good in the world. Like that's what I want them to be, but that may not be their path. And I think
Right.
that if I try to force too much on them, that creates friction in our relationship. And as hard as it is as a parent to just sit back and give them that freedom with strength constraints at their age, but as they get older, give them even more freedom. That scares me a little bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're not giving parental advice. I mean, because what my parents gave me, but I think it's universal, far as building young people up and giving them some latitude to express themselves. Because if you shut things down early, then and that may be traumatic later. That said, on the flip side of that, introducing uh, I like that word constraints. I mean, trade-offs. There's themes of trade-offs in here, okay? Because it introduces, okay, you can pursue a personal legend. That said, there's trade-offs for that. You mentioned Kobe. You mentioned people that just yeah, you hear it all the time. They just go, 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 go. There's sacrifices for that though too. If it's done not with an attempt, with some sort of balance, or attempt at some sort of, you know, I guess balance is the word for lack thereof. So awareness of how the world works, what if you pursue one, what's going to happen, the other, what the mechanisms are. All right, not to instill fear, but also uh, not to just paint a bed of roses either. you know and I think the book deals with that as well too, is letting you know that, hey, if you pursue your personal legend, you have to be fulfilled with that process and purpose, and without any particularly monetary value, or uh, any award, or anything. If that's your drive, and there's experiences that go along with it, then that's what you chose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's key to have the whole Bailey wax introduced to you,
Mm-hmm.
and not just half the story.
Right. I want to make sure we have some time to talk about life, money, balance. So as we kind of wrap up, because I didn't want to give too much of the book away. I want people to go read it.
Yeah.
And maybe we can even have like a virtual book club about it at some point with readers. But do you have a favorite passage or one that sticks out as your favorite quote or section of the book?
Ooh. Oh man. Let's see. I think I went over a few already, but uh I mean, this is real generic because I just flipped to it, I guess. The closer one gets to realizing his or her personal legend, the more that personal legend becomes his or her true reason for being. Yes. Yeah. So I'll read it again. The closer one gets to realizing his or her personal legend, the more that personal legend becomes his or her true reason for being. You know, um, I've I'm getting there. I'm not there yet either, Justin. I'm. It's a journey of life. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be to have the space to maximize oneself, or at least go on that journey. That in of itself is a gift. That is a gift, and I think I'm close to where think I wanted to go. I've instilled a lot of faith in my higher power, and putting a lot of work in, because it's faith and works for those that need to know. you know, and I'm willing to open myself up, and I've been going through this here lately. Just opening myself up more to just submission, and say, what is next? Am I close to that? Am I close to that? And this is why it's like, is this what we were going after? So that passage hits home to me, because I feel like I'm getting there, and I just want to be able to allow myself to be more open to make sure this is it, and then grow into it.
Right.
Passage. So
I feel like I'm in a similar spot. But I, on the other hand, like I want to rush to it. Like I think I know where it's at, so I just want to get there and see like, okay, this is it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's hybrid. It's pursuit growing bigger, and it's still maintaining my role as a financial advisor, because those two are going to be interconnected. What I hope
Mhm.
pursuit ends up being is, part this philosophical conversation, the encouragement, the resources for people to go on their journey, and how do they do that, make sense of it all, and then bring my financial expertise to say, okay, how do you make it work within your financial planning? Like, how do you make both sides? Because for a lot of people, fear of the personal journey is the money side of things. Like, how do I afford my life? How do I do things? I can't take this risk because I have such a good income and all these different things. So I think that what my personal legend is going to end up being is putting those two pieces together, and being a resource that can speak to what we talked about today, but also speak to here's how you make it work on the financial side, which would be good to get the life money balance, because I have a thought on that as well. But I was going to share mine, because my quote I was going to share is not too different than yours. It's got to be in the same area of the book. It says, if a person is living out his personal legend, he knows everything he needs to know. There's only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure. And I think the fear of failure becomes easier to overcome the more you try, because inevitably you're going to fail. And when you realize that you fail, it's not the end of the world. It's not as scary. Like, the more you fail, the easier it is to fail in the future, because you realize you pick yourself back up and you go. And there are some risks that are the failure is greater, but for most things, the fear is just really in our head, and it's an ego hit, or maybe it's a short-term setback. But there's a lot of lessons that are learned in that failure. Like, I don't really think you've ever failed, because there's something to learn from that that's going to help you on the journey. So to me, experimenting and creating is a big part of my journey. I think it's a part of everybody's journey, because that's where you learn. I think we're meant to create. It doesn't have to be create artwork. There's lots of different ways to create, but I think creating is a part of the journey. Anything about alchemists, the alchemies, they're creating.
Yeah.
So I think creation is something that is a part of us on our journey that needs to be let out as well. So I think that that's not too far off. in the book from where you're at, but that was
Mm-hmm.
mine, because I want to see people not let that fear hold them back. There's a quote I always quote. It's right behind my computer screen that Kendrick Lamar said, "There's beauty in completion and always faith in the unknown." And if you have faith
Mm.
in the unknown, then that fear kind of subsides a little bit, because, yeah, it's scary to not necessarily know what that next chapter is going to hold or what the next chapter is. But if you're on your path and you're pursuing that personal legend, you've mentioned faith a number of times. You've got to have faith in that next chapter that everything's going to work out. And if you're on your personal legend, you know everything you need to know to keep going, or so the book said.
Yeah. Yeah. Show you right. Show you right. Right on. Right there.
So let's transition quick and unsmoothly to life, money, balance. Tell me more about that concept, and if there's any connection to The Alchemist, that's cool. And if not, I think it's an important topic to cover, anyways.
No, it very much so is, and even we're aligned in that matter because life money balance came from uh, a life living aspirationally because life money balance in its sense is having your life lead your money, and we've been talking about that, and not your money lead your life is the second part of that. And we kicked off the show with kind of like my background story, and I saw, and there was a time in my life to where I saw in my personal statements, my bank statements, and it was where when I was feeling disconnected and disjointed and all that. I just didn't have any really direction in my life, and then I came back to doing an audit on my bank statements and also an audit into myself. It's an honest self audit. You know, and I juxtaposed those two, and life and money were going in opposite directions. All right, but I did an audit on my life first. All right, and I was like, this is not what I want to do anymore. I want to do something differently. I want to live aspirationally. I got. I don't want to do this anymore, so I can do what I want to do. I do not want to live like this anymore, right? So it was about aspiration. So that's where I get the live aspirationally from. So let your life lead your money. So define life's purpose, your right personal legend, right? And then use your money as a tool. So let your life lead your money, not your money lead your life. Have your life and money work concurrently. That's where I got the name of the firm from, to help you achieve your life and money goals and create your life's design to achieve your overall well-being. That's what life money balance is. It is a philosophy, it is a way of life. All right. And if and this is working, I mean, if you enter into this process, and if you allow yourself to give yourself permission to enter into this process, have the courage, have that ah moment that we talked about. And that ah moment, I've shared this in an article, which is, 3 A's, admit where we are, acknowledge how we feel, so you can take some action. And if you go through that process, so you can figure out what that aspiration is, and have that life lead money. Now we're getting into aspiration and creating our life design. This is what life money balance is all about. And so when I saw the pursuit, I was like, man, we kind of we kind of saying that, and we kind of saying the same thing, or on the same vibe. And then we met on The Alchemist. I was like, man, this is what's up. I was like, and you like Nas too. I was like, all right, man, beat these young people upside the head with some real hip hop too. Even though I'm a big R&B fan,
Mm-hmm.
you see the Stevie Wonder right here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but that's what it's all about.
So I for most of my career, traditional planning, superficial goals that everybody's told to have. I want to retire, and not superficial, they're not good, but everybody wants to retire. Everybody wants to go to college. But early in my career, I didn't have a lot of people open up to what they really wanted out of life. And then I just naturally kind of gravitated into asking more questions and trying to get deeper into what people wanted, what money meant to them. And, then I found about life planning. The George Kinner started, thanks to Scott Frank, my friend. And I read that. I was like, that really resonates with me. Like, that's basically what I'm trying to get people to do, but it's not as official. So that was when I started in my content. This is the cool thing about creating, is I can go back over time and I can see my evolution as an advisor, but also as a person in my thoughts. So I started talking about aligning values and dollars. And it wasn't until maybe this year or late last year, I started to question, well, do I want to align my values and dollars? Because to me, alignment means they're not side by side, and you have to give on both of them. And maybe you will. But what if we said, I'm going to put my values or my personal legend or my passions at the center, and I'm going to build
Hmm.
around that. So now I don't compromise me at all. I compromise the dollars to make it all work, which
Hmm.
is, maybe it's not that different than alignment, but the way my mind operates, it puts a little bit more emphasis on the me and the values and the life that I want, and putting that as the priority. Now, you're always probably going to have to budge a little bit. Like, my ideal day, we were talking about California and where we live. Like, I would, to have the perfect life, I would be probably in California or some environment where I'm close to the ocean, there's mountains, warm weather all year round. So wherever that may be, I know there's other places in the world that could be, but I'll probably never do that. So I am compromising a little bit of me, but it's a small part because everything else is the most important things are my family, it's my clients, it's the ability to create and have freedom and flexibility. Like, those are things I can't budge on. Where I live, like, there's other things that would be nicer, but that I can budge on. But still, I've got those core things that are most important, that those will never be compromised. And those are
Right.
at the center, and then I build everything else around it. And then that feeds my belief that if you've got the things that are most important, then they're going to vary for everybody. For me, again, it's family, it's myself, it's creating, it's my clients, that because that's what I enjoy the most, that I'm just going to be the best version of myself, and I'm going to be as successful as I need to be, and the dollars will follow. The other thing
That's
I
right.
believe is that if you go back to your exercise of looking at your spending, you may be spending a lot of money on things that aren't really that meaningful, that would allow you to put yourself in a different financial situation from an income standpoint, that makes you happier doing that whatever that might be, despite making less money, but you've shed all the things that don't bring you happiness anyway. So that is
Mhm.
a long way of saying that I also think that if you focus on your passions and those things that are most important, you might realize you don't need as much money as you thought you did, because you've got
Mm.
everything that you need right in the center, that you throw out the things that aren't as important. You don't need as much money. If what's most important to you is spending time with your family and whatever your career might be, you may not need that big old house. Like, you have a big house, you're not as close to your family. So you say, all right, really what's most important to me is my family, let's drop this big house that we don't need. Let's be in a smaller house where we're closer together anyways, and we have less finance. I think there's a way that being led by passion can actually allow you to live on less, which solves the financial problem as well. And I think even when you get to that situation, because you're happier, you're more productive, you're giving it your all, you're your best version of yourself, success just naturally follows. And with that will come more dollars if that's what you want and need. And that's the
Yeah.
faith thing that I can't prove to you that works, but I've lived it and I've seen other people who lived it. So I just want to challenge people to maybe consider that a little bit.
Most definitely. You just gotta. Some things you just can't explain with words. You just gotta let it. You just gotta let people experience it.
Right, right. Well, and it's a lot of things in life that you can be told
Yeah.
something, but until you actually experience it, it doesn't, it never, you don't get that ah moment, but until you actually
Nope.
experience it.
Nope. Yep. That's right. That's right.
So,
Yeah.
anything we want to conclude with, and by we, I mean you, anything you want to
R-
conclude with when it comes to Alchemist or Life Money Balance? I know you got a podcast coming out, so I'm going to have you plug that at the end. But anything in
Yeah.
conclusion before we get to my final question?
No, no, man. We've covered a lot, man. Because we just naturally just covered things, because the conversation was just so raw. It was so good. So no, I don't have anything to cover. I guess one thing is just like you said, just read the book. Read it. It won't take you very long. Meditate on it, take notes, come back on it again. Put it down, read it again in a couple of years, maybe even months. I may even read it again in a few months. I may come back again, but this is just one of those things, one of those books that will be a seminal part of people's lives if you allow it to. So yeah, just go in with the open heart, open spirit, open mind, and it will touch you in some way.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, final question, because I'm not even going to muddy that up. That was a perfect ending. I ask everybody this. I love music. We already talked a little bit about it already, but so you're back on the speaking circuit. You're a
Yep.
speaker, you're keynote speaking, and you have the opportunity to have some music to walk out to. What is your walkout song?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Let's see. Wow. Okay, so the songs I got a couple of songs. So one of my default is something Mike. Mike Jackson. Something Mike Jackson. Whether it be, um, it would probably be like working day and night, working day and night. Oh man, it just that I mean that's off the hook. All right, and then there's a song by this group called Sound of Blackness called Optimistic.
Okay.
It's so awesome. Just the words, the beat. It's got a bass line. It's incredible too. So it's optimistic, and it just talks about what we're really talking about today. Is just mindset and all that, and it's real uplifting. So one of those two songs, and you can never go wrong with being brought on stage with some James Brown. All right, so you can get on there and get real hyped on some James Brown, and you can be all right. And depending on the crowd, I can always be brought out. This is probably fourth in line. It depends on the crowd because you never go wrong with Mike. But you can bring me out. You can bring me out with some Buster at any time. And you can bring me out with some Buster.
All right.
So
What Busta?
yeah, if I'm gonna go hip hop, you can bring me out with some Buster.
What Busta song?
You can probably put your hands where I can see. Probably because I do not do. You coming out, yeah. Because you can get everybody.
You're not walking.
Yeah.
You're shimmying and you're dancing on the way out, aren't you?
Yeah, because the crowd gonna get hype, because when you're coming out, everybody understands music. So when you come out, all of those songs, even optimistic, it's a great song. Everybody's coming out, and I love breaking out music because it brings everybody together. Because even working day and night when you're coming out, everybody knows that as soon as that lick drops, working day and night, everybody just and they just everybody's getting it. So when you play, put your hands where my eyes can see. Everybody's in the crowd, do. Everybody there, so everybody's kicked off and they ready to listen. So it's all good. Yep.
I love it. All right. Well, let everybody know where they can follow you. Drop the social media handles. The podcast. The podcast hasn't come out yet, has it?
It's about to drop. It's going to be in the RSS feed. So by the time everybody hears this, probably should be.
Okay.
So all the social media, all of the popular podcast platforms, Google, Apple, all the tune-ins, all those. So yes. So Life Money Balance is the podcast name. As far as my social handle is concerned, it's Dr. Preston Cherry. So Dr. Preston Cherry, Twitter, IG, LinkedIn, Facebook. That's where you'll find me. And the company website is concurrentfp.com.
Well, I wouldn't be a podcast host if I didn't tell you. Those will all be in the show notes, so you can make it easy for you to find Dr. Cherry. Preston, I appreciate you taking the time on. I know this will not be the last time we chat. Like I said, we're going to have you on again to talk more about your personal pursuit and get deeper into your personal legend. But I think this was a great introduction to The Alchemist. I'm glad you gave me an hour of your time. I love talking to you. Your energy comes across, and I just feel it because that's how I am as well. So I'm excited for where our relationship and friendship goes that spurs off of this podcast. So thanks for joining me and sharing your experience of The Alchemist with everybody. And everybody watching and listening, thanks for tuning in. Like, share, all those great things. And we'll see you all in the next episode. We'll keep on this pursuit together.
Hit you with no delaying, so what you saying, yo? Silly with my 9 milli with the dilly, yo. When I be on the mic, yes, I do my duty, yo. While up in the club like we while in the studio. You don't wanna violate, nigga, really and truly, yo. My main thug, nigga named Julio, he moody, yo.